I write stuff, I podcast, and occasionally I dabble in illustration and I play with audio stuff too. My guest is freelancer, author extraordinaire, the one and only Troy Lambert. How you doing, buddy?
Good, good. Thanks for having me again, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, I like having you. So what we were saying, so Troy was originally on, I think, somewhere in the 200s. I'm going to say 220s, but I could be wrong. I don't know why. It blurs how many, no, you were after Spiders, probably 240s, 250s, something in there. But anyways, this is always kind of where I envisioned the show going, because for me, at least, I've always had this thought in my head of having like a talk show where I'd come in and I interview people in like a set. And I was a big fan of, did you ever see The Late Show with Tom Schneider?
Oh, yeah.
I'm a big fan of that show because it was neat, because he would come in, he'd get these people that were really, really incredibly talented, and you really get the sense of who they were. Like, he had a really good knack of cutting through a lot of BS. And it's late like television, so nobody's watching. So it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, I get to say whatever I want to say, do whatever it is I want to do. And it's like Dick Clark on his show was like, he's a smart guy. Like, you realize how smart some of these people really are, because they come on his show, they're talking about real life stuff. They're not talking about like, hey, my product and my answers aren't paper thin. Because this question's like, what do you think about this? No,
Yeah.
it's not that. It was a very serious show, and I've always been working towards that. And so last year, you'll appreciate this from a freelance standpoint. The biggest challenge you have is finding your niche.
Yeah.
So the realization I had about in October was, this is my niche. Like, I honestly think like this is what I'm known for. I've done a lot of work doing this. Why mess it up? Does that make sense?
No, that exactly makes sense, because I mean, I just came off of, this is Writer Conference Decompress Day number 2. I did 11 presentations in 3 days at the end of last week. And so, you get that con exhaustion. But also, I mean, I was talking to a lot of writers and a lot of creatives, artists, and stuff like that. Almost every one of them, one of the things they said was, the key is really finding where you belong, finding your niche, finding your writer voice or your author voice or whatever it is, because there's only one you. You know what I mean? There's only one you. Everybody else is taken. So stop trying to imitate somebody else and be who you are. And so once you find what you were kind of built to do, I feel like then once you settle in, it's like, it's not that it's not work anymore, but it's a pleasure to work. I mean, it really is.
Well, I like, for me, the challenge now for me is, okay, how can I monetize this? Now, there's a lot of different ways I can do this, right? No, but the thing is, like, I don't look at it as like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. No, that's not it at all. It's okay, what can I do? Like, I put up podcast services on my website the other day, because I really should be offering this, because it's not like I don't know what I'm doing, and people can come and if they want me to consult with them or help them build a show, I can do that. What is this, 507?
Yeah.
I can do this. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's one option. That's the service end of it. From the writing end of it, right? Me and you can have a great conversation. And maybe at the end of this conversation, I go, hey, listen, can I transcribe this and maybe sell this to a magazine? That's another possibility.
There you go.
Right? That's another. And honestly, I again, one of those things should have hit me a lot sooner than later. I have 500 interviews in my back. Like, right? I'm good at them. So why not just go to markets where I can do a good interview, figure out what the story of the interview is, pitch that, find a home, and that's just 2, right?
Yeah.
That's just 2, right? And then there's Twitch, where this is airing. There's YouTube. There's all these writers, content creators make this one big mistake. I'm not saying you shouldn't keep creating content, because we're going to do that anyway. But you can sell content, one piece of content can be sold many different times. If you look at the publishing industry, that's what they do.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you a story about that, because this is a true story from my early freelancing days. Because so when I started freelancing, one of the things, I wanted to be a writer for a really, really long time, but I had no idea how to make money at it. I mean, I was just kind of like, I want to write and I'm just going to traditionally publish and keep sending off queried letters. And I'm like, frankly, it was, at the time, especially, it was dumb. I was spinning my wheels. Self-publishing was coming on. There were all kinds of options, but I didn't see them, And then I got this freelance gig, and I'm writing research reports for the federal government, and I'm making money off of my words. And I'm realizing that these guys that have huge degrees and all this other stuff, they can't write worth a hoot. They can't.
Yep.
I mean, they literally can't. Like, they can't string together a sentence to save their lives. And I'm getting paid to do it for them.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, okay, well then what was beautiful is I write the report for the EPA, right? Then Idaho Department of Environmental Quality comes along and says, we want a report like that too. And I say, sure, why not? I change some images, the title, change a few words, and I sell the same report again for the exact same amount of money. And I didn't redo it. I just used the same material I already had and sold it again. And then sold it again to the Forest Service. And so I would sell 3 reports to 3 different, and it's the same report. We do this all the time as writers. We create this great content, but we do nothing. We do so little with it that what we need to think, I work with another agent in the UK right now, and we call it beyond the book. Think beyond the book. What do your readers want that's beyond what books you have? And give it to them. You have it. Give it up.
Well, it's not. Let's go like even with books. Let's talk like novels, for example. Like you shouldn't just be thinking about that first novel sale or even the foreign rights sales. You shouldn't even be thinking just there. Why are you stopping there? Why not a video game? Why not a board game? Why not a movie? Why not a television series? Why not everything you got? And this is the true business. It's not about one sale. Any of us can get one sale. We can fall and slip on a banana peel and get one sale. It happens. Right? In fact, hell, it probably wasn't. My first, I literally slipped and fell on a banana peel, right? And literally got that's what happened, right? But that takes a little skill. 1 second. My door popped open mysteriously. I'm going to go check it out real quick. I'll be right back. But,
go do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sing and dance.
Sing and dance.
All right.
Great. All right. Sweet.
All right. No, so we have a snowstorm here in Windsor, Ontario. This is the closest I've ever felt like it's Calgary. The closest. Nothing's quite like Calgary in terms of weather, but for Windsor, this is cold. But when we are in the business of creating content. The thing is, content can go in so many different directions. I kick myself because as I keep going down into freelancing, I realize how many missed opportunities I have screwed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I have lost tons of opportunities simply because I didn't know what I didn't know. And as much as we're creative, this is part of the problem that I have with myself too, is as creative as we are when we're creating stories and creating content, we forget to be creative in the use of those stories. Yeah. So we go, okay, like I have seen some authors and other people too, other creators as well, who you can make a beautiful painting, but you can't make a decent looking ad for that painting. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, why not? And it's because you're not applying the creativity, the same creativity you bring to your art, to your marketing, because you're seeing marketing as a dirty word. That's something I have to do to get the word out. And so instead of being creative about it, you're like, oh, I got to do this. And I'm like, you're losing opportunities. There's money on the table, and you're losing opportunities.
Money. And that's the thing I've actually it took me a long time to figure this out. And now I do have to kind of go back to somewhat of a day job thing for a little bit, but now I'm like, oh God, I figured this out. I think I figured some of this shit out. Some of it, not all of it, but some of it. Freelancing is a mentality. As much as, and more than anything else, it's a mentality. what you have to come to terms with the fact is that everything you do is worth money, and there's an abundance of opportunities around you. You gotta look beyond like what you think you know. Exactly. I told you like 5 or 6 different ways, ladies and gentlemen, about what you could do with your story. Thinking about that, but everything you create, there's a multitude of ways you can go with it. Now, some of it might not be in your wheelhouse. That's fair. I mean, hey, that's totally fair, right? Some of it might be that you're not ready for it. Also, equally fair. Like that's totally an equally thing. But I mean, the thing is, like I said, my mistake, and the one thing I hope people understand is, and although I don't feel it was a terrible mistake, because I've learned, heck, I did an audiobook, I published 2 books, I've started illustrating a little bit. I might actually get good at that at some point, right? Maybe we'll see.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, who knows? But the thing, I discovered how to make porn stashes with Lego. I feel like I've accomplished an important life lesson there. I don't know if that I don't know if that's the actual truth, but hey, you know.
It feels good. It feels like
it does. Yeah. Right. So all of this, which is to say, there's going to be a bit of a journey of trying to figure out where you fit, like where the spaghetti sticks to the wall. There always is a little bit of that journey, and I feel like for me, I'd say the first 6 months of my freelance journey was about figuring out where the spaghetti stuck to the wall, not realizing that spaghetti already kind of stuck to the wall already. It's just one of those.
Yeah. Well, truth, and the other thing about freelance is you have to understand. First of all, it's the temptation is to do things for cheap or for free at first because, well, I need to build my resume and my portfolio and my experience, and I'm like, no, not really. I mean, only to an extent, because you're devaluing your work, but not only your work, you're devaluing the work of other freelancers. If they're trying to get a job at, 10 cents a word and you're bidding 5 because you feel like you don't have the experience and you guys are producing the same level of quality, you just devalued that work because now that customer thinks it's worth 5 cents because that's what you charge. It's worth 5 cents a word. So there's a delicate balance there between, yes, you need to get jobs, yes, you need to gain experience, but at the same time, you have to understand that, I mean, as much as AI is able to do some things, they still can't write books. They still can't write as good a blog post as people do.
The other thing too is you gotta also recognize something as well. You gotta recognize your own worth, and something that's so. One of my favorite lessons. I've used this in presentations. I had a client I had to fire, and and I realized I had to fire them, and they were a friend. I hated to do it, and I've harped on this in the past, but to say anyone that has listened, but I think it's still important to understand. I had to learn to say no, and it's a really really important lesson. Like you can start like these websites like Fiverr and Freelancer. They're not necessarily bad things to get started with, because you do make contacts, you do meet people, and you can make some inroads and just do some small jobs and develop a little bit, get yourself rolling. And we all play that to some extent. But what you realize after you do a couple of those jobs, I actually say this, like if you're trying to make content, the best way I did is like I called for guest blogs. Hey, does anyone need me to write a blog for something? Because even though it's quote unquote free, what I've done is I've created a portfolio for myself that people can look at what I've done without even really trying. And also now I'm helping a friend out who might recommend me for another job down the road. It doesn't like it. None of this stuff hurts. And now I have a resume and a portfolio to build off of.
Yep.
Without even really trying. And then as I get more and more paid gigs, right, I start doing that less. And that's the big thing. Like you come to a point when you're doing this kind of stuff that you realize, okay, that's the quickest way to get stuff going. And then from there, you start using that content you've made to get gigs. Now, it doesn't hurt to understand things like SEO. That is a bit. A little bit sometimes understand what the hell is going on sometimes, because I sometimes think the Google machine doesn't really know what it's doing half the time. But
that's actually true. Google does not, the personnel at Google don't know what Google is doing anymore. The algorithm has surpassed the understanding of any single entity of the human element that has programmed it in many ways.
Mhm.
So while Google makes changes to it, because I've been in SEO, I started in SEO in 2009. And so I've weathered some of the big Google changes. And the basic thing is that some of the changes that are coming now is Google is trying to force the algorithm back into control. Because we've seen how, so for instance, there was a story about Facebook today, their AI for ad approvals. Okay, and they've got an artificial intelligence thing that looks at an ad and approves or disapproves it based on what it sees. So it approved an ad for a company that was selling pants, right? But they also sell pants for people with disabilities. So there was one ad of a guy standing in a pair of pants, approved, no problem. There was another guy in a wheelchair wearing a pair of pants, disapproved, because the AI thought that meant that the company was selling medical equipment, not pants. So now, of course, this did nothing for Facebook's PR nightmare that they're going through right now. But it's like, why wasn't there a human behind that said, "Hey, man"?
What the heck? Where am I hearing that?
I don't know.
That's you. That's you somewhere.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so. Hold on. Let's take a look. Oh, maybe not. Hold on. Okay, God. Okay, there he goes.
Okay.
I don't know what the hell happened. Oh, yeah. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, technology kicks my own ass sometimes. But what I've learned is like, yeah, no, there's it's interesting what you try to automate everything, and the problem is like there's like the stock market too, like the same kind of algorithms are running the stock market. So essentially, like it's a very interesting thing to say that we have essentially ceded control over to these automated processes. We have ceded this control because of convenience, which I think is a hilarious. There's an irony to that, and it's gonna like you can see it's gonna bite us in the ass at some point too, because if these automated processes control everything, I'm not saying they're necessary. And here's the thing. They don't even need to be like this like evil, malevolent thing. No, they're just gonna follow their program to what they feel is like whatever they think is the most efficient or reasonable or whatever. And there's nothing anyone's gonna be able to do about it. It's just
think of a lot of the sci-fi things where the machines take over. Is the machines simply decide that the best thing for humanity is to reduce the number of humans because there's too many of us, and we're overpopulating the planet, we're overusing resources. So the simplest solution is to reduce the number of humans, right? But I'm like, if you follow computer logic, it's not actually that far off. I actually read a quote the other day where a guy was talking about the surveillance society that we live in, and he said, part of the issue in so-called getting rid of it and restoring some kind of individual privacy like used to be, you controlled more of your information, is that people actually prefer a surveillance society. We opt into it all the time. We log into social media. We log into apps with our social media to share that information with everybody. And we do it voluntarily. Nobody makes us do that. We click on that button all by ourselves, right? Yeah. We like it when we're shopping for something and we see ads for similar things because then we can price compare and we didn't even work at it. Well, that's because of surveillance. But we like that convenience. And when that turns off, we go, well, that's not working anymore. That's because you're protecting your privacy.
The key word is convenience. Right, that's the key word to the whole thing. Like Walmart and Amazon made their money because they're convenient. That's the truth. Like I don't personally like. I say this with the gentlest of respects because I am trying to make money off it. I don't care for the concept Amazon has become. I don't. I don't care. I don't care because I was worried about this way back like 10 years ago. It's like they're going down the path of Walmart. Like you could see it 10 years ago. But much like Walmart, like to conquer the human race, the honest way to conquer the human race is make it easy, convenient to do so. People will take the path of convenience. They won't necessarily think because there's no pressure with convenience. If you go down the convenient path, if you go to make it convenient, people will go naturally gravitate towards that, even though it's been proven. Walmart cuts wages across the board. The fact of the matter is we pay for Walmart's goods and services in the backlog, wage scale, time worked. Where people are whining and crying right now about the hours being this is because we have bought into the concept of convenience culture. It's convenient for it to be this way. It's convenient, and no one wants to hear that, because that basically means that in order to change it, you got to buck away from those convenient things. Right. Amazon's done the same thing. In fact, in some ways, Amazon's done it better, because now you don't even have to go to the store, right? And now you don't even have to go to the store. So now you're like, I can get anything I want. Amazon's got it, and Amazon does. The one thing Amazon maintains is their customer service. But when you see, but that's the one thing they will not touch. It's the one thing they will not cut corners on too much, because they know that is their bread and butter. They're not going to fuck with that. But deep down on the inside, when people come see that the fact that Amazon's profits, the cost of that, is the fact that that job that was now once $24 an hour to do is now $16 an hour to do. And that's all because people wanted the convenience of it. That is a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. You want your wage scale back. You want your purchasing power back. You want your small businesses back. You have to cut that crap out. Now, if you're in a small town, you can't do that so easy, because that's all you got. But but the people that live in the cities like me, and I'm not sure exactly where you live. Let's say you live in a relatively big city. You have to make those choices. And for the most part, you can. But every once in a while, you're stuck. And actually, it's the worst thing about the pandemic. This is Walmart. This is Walmart's dream come true. This is totally Walmart's dream come true.
Amazon's too. Too. Because so where I live, I live in Boise, so we have plenty of small businesses and we have big businesses. But when I lived in northern Idaho, I lived in a small town. And one of the cheapest and most convenient groceries were at Walmart. Other than that, to get good quality groceries at a reasonable price, I had to drive 45 minutes. So more often than not, what did I do? Well, I went to Walmart. I'm not a fan of Walmart. I don't like Walmart, but Walmart was right there, and it was really hard to justify an hour and a half worth of driving to go pick up some butter, right? So
you can't do that.
You just can't do it. But in Boise, we have choices, right? So I hardly ever go to Walmart here because I don't like Walmart, but I do because of the pandemic. I mean, we've ordered tons of stuff off of Amazon, and acknowledged. I'm an author. Probably 85% of my money still comes from Amazon. But part of the problem with that is I sell books directly on my website. You could buy them directly on my website, but hardly anybody does, because it's way more convenient to buy it at Amazon, because they can buy it with everything else that they're buying. Right. And just have one shipment. So what it would take for that to change for readers is literally for them to say, we're not shopping at Amazon. We're going to buy directly from authors' websites. It's not nearly as convenient. It's harder to find people's books that way and your next book that you want to read. But that's the answer to stepping away from Amazon, is to give up that convenience. Well, and also give up prices on a lot of things. Let's face it, Amazon beats the heck out of other people on prices. And it's hard to justify not only the higher price, but I have to drive and go get the thing somewhere in town.
It's the IKEA effect. Now, once upon a time, I could go get a really good couch. Good couch lasts me 20 years, easy. Now I go to IKEA, I get a couch that might last me 3 years. Might. Might, maybe less, because it's cheaper. We have become a very disposable culture. And that, I mean, one of the ways, like the human resource problem, honestly, it would like one of the ways to solve it is to build stuff to last again.
Yeah.
We don't do that because it's convenient not to. And I recognize something too. Like if you want, again, you want to slave the human race, make it convenient. That's the way to do it because it works. That's the scary, like that's the really frightening thought, because people will almost always choose convenience. And that is a habit they figured this out. If I'm going to come at you and I'm going to say, you have to do this in order to do this, you're going to tell me to go fuck myself.
Yeah.
No questions asked. But if I go to you and said, you can do what you want, but if you want this, you're going to do it like this. And if it's right there and if it's convenient and it can be done, it doesn't matter what violation I'm doing to you, you'll do it. That is very much human psychology today. So if that's the case, and someone listening to this and watching this go, oh my God, like this is scary. It's like, yeah, it is. This is something you need to understand. You need to understand this about that. This is human nature 101, right? I'm not making this up. I'm not telling you. I'm not like, we know Walmart's bad for us. Why do we shop there? For the most part, if you're in a small, and by the way, if you're in a small town watching this or listening to this, I'm not saying it's you, right? Because you don't necessarily have the choice. But if you're in a big town, a big city, a big place, a big and you're shopping, it's because it's convenient and it's cheap, right? And that's why you're doing it. And that impacts everything. Now, if you want to move things away from that, recognize the 1920 railroad problem that Walmart and Amazon caused. Shut it down, because you do to them what you do to the railroads. That's how you deal with them. But you're not going to get that unless you recognize deep down on the inside that this is what they're doing. This is how they're doing it. This is what governments are doing now. Like I'm expecting to see, like in regards to the, I mean, it's going to be how everything from the vaccines are going to be marketed in the next year. And yes, they are going to be marketed, ladies and gentlemen. That's what they're going to do. It's convenience. That's the selling. That's going to be the selling point, because that's how everything is done. Convenience sells.
Convenience and cheap. And part of that is, first of all, we have this thing that we work hard. I work to save my money. I don't want to go to a lot of effort to do things that I find pleasurable, right? So like if I want to buy a book, what do? Well, somebody tells me about it. I look it up on Amazon. I order it and it shows up tomorrow at my door, right? Or even, food, or some item, whatever the case may be, without ever going out of the house. Like, for instance, a while ago, I was ordering something. I don't remember. It was electronic. And I looked at Best Buy, my local Best Buy, right? Or local electronic shop. So I go pick it up, right? They said they didn't have it in stock. If I ordered it, it would take 5 days to get to my house. If I ordered it to pick up in the store, it was going to take 8 days. If I ordered it off Amazon, I get it the next day. Now, what am I going to do if I need this thing, right? I'm going to order it from the place that has it and can get it to me the fastest. And as long as Amazon continues to fill that convenience need, I'm going to order it there. Now, that's not because I'm in love with Amazon, because what I find in talking to people is very few of them are in love with, as far as the concepts of big tech. They're not big fans of Microsoft. They're not big fans of Facebook. They're not big fans of Google and these people that control our information. At the same time, they're complaining about it on Facebook. They're using Google to search articles that tell them about how bad Google is. And I mean, but seriously, we do it.
I know.
We do it because why? Well, because that's where I find the answers is on Google. If we suddenly took Google away and shut it down and people had to use other search engines, there would be a huge outcry from a lot of people to make those search engines more like Google. Well, to do that, those search engines would have to do the exact same things that Google has done. And we, as people, would allow them to do it.
Yeah.
Because we would actually be begging them to do it. Google worked this way, so make Dogpile work this way. And Dogpile goes, okay, but to do that, we have to. And people go, okay, that's fine. Go ahead.
And
Accept terms and conditions. Accept terms and conditions. Inside the terms and conditions for one of my websites is a chocolate chip cookie recipe. If you read the whole thing, you will get my recipe for chocolate chip cookies.
That's worth watching. That's worth reading. I know user agreements.
You know?
So I'll give you two. Like, there's a couple things to unpack there. So I know, like, pandemic, lockdown. So chapters, the local chapters, the bookstore here has a book I want. They have 6 copies of the book I want. It is not on the website, and their customer service cannot look in the store to tell me if they have the book. Ring the book. Like, there are literally people in the store. This is the part that's dumb to me. There are literally people in the store. You can ring the book. Like, you literally ring it up, and I will pay you money for it right now. I'll come pick it up. I don't even need to go in the store. I'm willing to go pick it up because I want to support you. And you can't even tell me if you got the book. I found it on myself on the website that you have 6 copies of this book. Not 1, 6. And I can't order it because your website's on drugs. Or and it's not sharing with me, so I too can get this, how messed up this really is. And then I can't call you. I can't ring an order. This is the other thing about the pandemic. It shows, like, really how ill-equipped a lot of places are for actual customer service. It's actually incredible.
But it reveals, too, who can adapt. So our local bookstore, Rediscovered Books, like, their online retail sales went up like 300% with the pandemic. Why? Well, they flipped around. They figured out their website. They did curbside pickup. They had appointments if you wanted to come browse. They had all kinds of things. So, they didn't make the revenue they did the year before, but they found a way to survive, and not only survive, but actually thrive pretty well during the pandemic for a bookstore because they pivoted. The whole problem that we have with Amazon, as far as, let's say, books and products wise, is the other people that provide those products locally in your area have not pivoted to meet what we call the Amazon challenge. Instead, they've just said, Amazon's killing us. And I'm like, they're killing you because you're letting them. You can build a decent website where people can order from you. And believe me, looking at our local bookstore, people will do it. They want to support you. But if I go to your website and I can't find stuff, I mean, I can find it in 2 minutes. It's a time factor. So it's a part of what we're talking about is pivoting is business. And we know as freelancers, we pivot all the time. 2020 was not the same as 2019 for any freelancer that I know, not one. However, the ones that did fine, every one of them pivoted. In March, we said, all right, the shit is hitting the fan. It is time to do things differently, right? And that's what we did. People that didn't do that, sorry.
I'm still learning, right? Like, again, for me, I started freelancing in 2020, so I picked the hell of a year to actually get the ball rolling. But it was always the plan. I mean, it was always the plan to give it a go and a try. And I knew going in, I may have to bounce back and forth a little bit until I find the groove. I knew that, right? But it's also just like you have to recognize. It's recognizing about what you offer and what you can do. And the one other thing about, like, this is now the freelancing age. Like, honestly, guys, this is the freelancing age.
It is.
I pointed out something I did a presentation about freelancing on Sunday. And one of the things I pointed out was remote's actually a godsend for most of us. Because what it actually has done now is, I'm very curious what the office environment is going to be like in 3 years. Because it's going to be very interesting to see what it's still there. Because I do think at some point this year, the pandemic is going to swing away from lockdowns into whatever it's going to go to next. It's going to swing away from that a little bit.
The new normal. Unprecedented. New normal.
Whatever.
Our favorite words. Anyway.
Yeah. Wherever we go, one of the things that's for sure has changed is the office job. Because the office jobs have realized, by and large, these giant buildings to cover up for the fact that maybe there's some confidence issues and some issues with some of the owners, right, are by and large unnecessary. And that's going to create a huge cascade effect for the next 5 years. Easy.
At least.
Yeah. And I'm talking strictly office jobs at this point, not the housing markets are going to be very interesting in 2025. They're going to be very interesting.
Yes. Right? The thing called Zoom towns is still going to be a thing.
Yes.
Because if you can work remotely, I mean, we've seen it in the U.S. Okay. San Francisco was one of the most expensive places in the country to live. You couldn't live downtown. Doctors and lawyers were moving out of downtown San Francisco because they couldn't afford it. I mean, they're paying $250,000 or more for a one bedroom. They have any size of a family, they're paying $500,000 for a 3-bedroom apartment, right? Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, and nobody can afford it. And the property taxes are huge, and the cost of living, because there's no there's no chain stores downtown or anything. So it's an outrageous place to live. But it was where the hub of like a lot of the tech industry was. Well, now, who cares? I can work. So there's people flooding into Boise from San Francisco because they sold their homes there. They can come here and buy 2 for the same price they could in San Francisco.
Well, yeah.
And they just work remotely so for us as freelancers, we go, man, first of all, I've been working at home for a long time. And I'm like, companies are finally realizing, oh, that actually works. But it also means you opened up everything to your workforce. First of all, you don't have to employ people. For certain jobs, you can just use contractors as you need them. And then when you don't need them, they move on to something else. You move on to something else that's fine. So you're not wasting a lot of hiring and laying off and things like that. Just use contractors. The second thing is that now your company in Boise can hire somebody in New Jersey, and that person doesn't have to move to Boise. They can stay where they like to live in New Jersey and work from there. So we've got a worldwide talent pool that's been there for years. It's been possible for years, but companies are just now with the pandemic realizing that they can tap into that.
Yes, and that will be interesting I truly hope workers realize how much power they still have, even though the companies are like, hey, we don't need you anymore. And the flip side, though, is, and this is something I hope workers realize, you don't necessarily need those companies anymore either. And that's actually it's going to be a really interesting give and take. The housing market is where I'm not getting a house until 2025, because at that point, I figured enough downtown to crater that it might be a steal. Because I cannot wait to see, because I know if the city officials haven't realized this yet, I know I have. These companies are not going to be going for these same big buildings, and they're going to bulk at paying a fraction of that for a fraction of the building size they may need. So I'm going to be very, very curious what you do in a large metropolis. Like I'm in Windsor, Ontario. There is no small business here worth mentioning. When the office buildings shrink here, when they inevitably do, the homeowners here are going to get creamed. Like, they're just going to get creamed, and you can see it. Because Calgary and Toronto here are the outliers. Calgary's already had their downtown kind of excavate. They were doing that prior to the pandemic, so now it's just going to speed up even faster. Toronto's in the same boat, right?
Yeah.
There's a handful of cities that will be able to maintain it. Maybe like Vancouver, maybe like LA, right? Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. But that's it. For the most part, property that and taxing the homes isn't an out either, because frankly, no one can afford it on the wages that are there. So
that's exactly.
So these houses that were worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, well, either one of two things is going to happen. They're going to be worth even more, which is a possibility, or they're going to be worth nothing, right? It's going to be one or the other, because that's where we're going. And so I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking to myself, like, 2025 is going to be interesting, because at that point, all the leases will be up. All the companies will have pivoted to whatever that normal is at that point in time. And it's going to be a very different world. And
Yeah.
yeah.
People are going to live where they want is what really, as long as, because like my wife and I are looking at houses, but we're looking at houses like outside of the Boise area. And our number one requirement is, do we have access to high-speed internet?
Yeah.
And
that's going to jump up.
You wouldn't think that this would be the first requirement for a home, right? But for us, because we both work at home, my wife's company, so they were on the verge of building a big headquarters here in Boise, right? Pandemic hits, they scrap it. Why? Because now 60% of their workforce works at home, and they've decided that most of those people can just continue to work at home. So why build a big building, right?
Yeah,
so it's already happening. The other thing that's happening in the U.S. as far as the housing market is concerned is unemployment numbers are slowly going down, but we still have a huge number of people that are unemployed. Now, there's a moratorium in various places on foreclosures and things like that, but it doesn't mean that at the end of that moratorium, you don't owe your back payments, So at some point, that's going to come into, there's a bubble there that's just waiting to burst. And you think about it, it's the same thing with commercial real estate. There's been a moratorium on, we're not charging you rent, or we're not making you pay your rent right now, right? And the landlords are like, okay. So the banks are like, okay, well, we're not making the landlords pay their mortgages yet. But at the end of this, at some point, all that is going to come due. And either people are going to be able to pay it or they're not. And when they can't, there's going to be huge vacancies everywhere, because you can't keep snowballing this only to a certain point, and eventually somebody's got to pay up. So unless the government goes, all these things are canceled and just pays everybody money, which it doesn't look like that's going to be possible in the U.S. with our current politics, then somebody has to pay the piper, right?
Yeah.
And this is kind of the people that are in the best position are going to be those that are independent of a lot of those different factors that are happening, and that's really where freelancers, people that work remotely and that have job skills to work remotely, come in. And really, those of you that are listening, you probably have freelance skills, and you probably are not thinking about it, but almost every one of you has skills that you could turn into a freelance career. And the part of this was, I didn't think about this when I finally decided I've had enough of my life and enough of jobs, and I'm going to write full time. Whatever that looks like, whatever it takes, I'm going to write full time. Until I got contracts that paid me extremely well, suddenly I realized other people can't write and I can, and my words are very valuable. They're worth money. But there are skills that you have, almost every single person has, that are valuable, that are worth money, that companies are looking for, and that they will hire you as a contractor to do those things. And you don't have to go into an office. You don't have to have a job. And honestly, the other thing is, don't think of it as work from home. Work from home, first of all, is terrible advertising. It's terrible branding. It's awful, because the real truth is you can work from anywhere. You can get yourself your own little office. And with commercial real estate in Boise right now, I can get a plush office down the street for $200 a month. It's nothing. It's peanuts. But if I couldn't work at home, but my wife and I both have offices at home, so we're able to work at home, and we don't have kids at home anymore, and our pets are fairly mellow, that type of thing. So we don't have the problems that some other people have. But even if you have kids at home, you can go get a small office that's not far from your house, a couple $100 a month, walk there every day, walk home, whatever you got to do, put up an office in your backyard with a little building or whatever, and you can work from home and just make that your workplace, that office your workplace, and you can be your own boss, essentially. And so you're absolutely right. You don't need those companies anymore. They may be saying, we don't need you because of this and that, but you can either use the skills you have or retrain in new skills and work for yourself, and you don't need that company anymore either.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what I'm going to be doing next. Like for me, I realized that I'm probably going to, as it stands right now, I'm probably about a year now that I know what the hell I'm doing. I'm probably got about a year or two before I really start getting what I want out of it.
Right.
That all said, the things I wish I knew 6 months when I started. But I think everybody has to go through that journey, right?
Yep.
So
Always,
yeah,
always,
everybody
always.
has to go through that journey. And but the thing about that is, I might like my first step. I know, and this is going to be getting a security license, become a security guard somewhere. Why? Because as a security guard, I can keep training. Right.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea behind it. I can keep training and in upping my craft and upping my skills. For me, it's marketing and broadcasting because that's what I do. So why do anything else? And then help people that want to be helped. I have skills. I know how to say no. I also have nothing to lose, which puts me in a very unique position. I don't care. And that in the best way, not like I'm not going to like.
Right. No, in a good way. There's a certain amount of risk that comes with the type of leap that you're talking about. And I always tell people too, so there's a journey to that leap for most people. Most people can't just go, well, screw it, quit my day job and I'm going to go freelance, because you don't have, there's some knowledge and some skills that you need to gain before you can do that. But you can certainly start doing it part-time. And I always tell people too, I started out with a 5-year plan, right? Because you're supposed to have a 5-year business plan, right? You go to business school, you get, okay, 5-year plan. I finished my 5-year plan in 3. And then I went, all right, well, now what? And had to start a new plan, right? But my 5-year plan, I finished in 3. You can finish early. A friend of mine has a rolling writing schedule, and I love this. I've adopted it for myself. So instead of saying, I'm going to do these things this year, and this month I'm going to do this month I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this first, and after that I'm going to roll into this, and after that I'm going to roll into this. If I get it done faster, I roll into the next project faster. If I get it done slower, I just wait to roll into the next project. It doesn't matter, because I'm always moving forward, and then I'm setting other projects beyond that, setting other goals beyond that. And that's really what it's about. So do the exact same thing. If you're thinking of popping the commercials or the, corporate chute and getting out, have a plan and then execute your rolling plan. And if it goes faster than you planned, fantastic. Get out and do your own thing. If it goes slower, be willing to just be patient and wait. It will come, because what will happen is something will hit you from the left that you had no idea. Like, you're like, this was not exactly my thought, but man, that sure works. And then you integrate that into what you're doing. It happens to business people all the time. And it's just something people don't talk about very much. But if you're moving forward, it's easier for things to come at you. You're just sitting still waiting for something to happen.
Yeah, well, you have that again. It's a mentality. Like, honestly, I truly think freelancing is all about mentality. Like, I had some money saved up. I had an opportunity. I took advantage of the opportunity. I know that opportunity is coming to an end. I think I'm happy with what I did. I made thousands of dollars my first year as a freelancer. Not great, but not terrible either. So now this year my goal is to make more. But also, while I'm doing that, put myself in a position to keep, like, again, I have goals. And so whether I get them when I want to get them, whether I have to wait to get them, doesn't matter. I'm going to get there. I'm not going to let anything stop me. And at this point in my life, again, I'm at that point in my life where it's like, if it doesn't pay me well, make me happy, or give me an orgasm, I don't care.
Yeah.
That's it.
Dude, this is the thing is, so for anybody that's younger that's listening to this, the younger you come to this realization, the better. Okay, there is, and that doesn't mean you have to have some specific job that makes you happy. I know tons of people. I know there's a guy that I see every year at a writers conference. We didn't see him this year because we did it virtually, right? The guy is a bartender at a hotel. He's been a bartender at that hotel for, I think it's 16 or 17 years. His name is Michael. I see him once a year. When I see him, he remembers my name. He remembers my drink. He remembers who I am, and he is super passionate about what he does. It doesn't matter what you do. If you're passionate about serving people as a bartender, and I know lots of people that really enjoy that job, well, then here's an idea. Be the best bartender you can. Go over wherever it makes you the money that you want, that you need to survive, and to feel like you're thriving, whatever that amount is to you. Because the idea of making a living is there's a vast difference in what making a living means to different people. So make what you consider to be a living, right? Stop comparing yourself to other people. It's bullshit is what it is. And if you're happy being a bartender, then be a bartender at the coolest place. And if this place that you're at isn't cool anymore, find another place that's cool and go be a bartender there and make it your own. I mean, do that. But I mean, people do all kinds of things that they're happy with, but just realize your job should have a certain amount of satisfaction in it. And that doesn't mean not everyone is designed to be an entrepreneur and go out and do these crazy things. Because I can tell you, it's hard. It's not easy, but it doesn't matter if it's easy. If it's something that makes you happy, you'll do it anyway. So, I mean, that's a part of my advice is, God, just find something you're passionate about and do it. I don't care if that's working for somebody else or working for yourself, whatever it is, but do it.
I'm doing 7 interviews this week. I wouldn't do it if I didn't like it, right? So
yeah, no, it would drive you nuts to do something like that.
Yeah, no, I deal so many personalities, and it's all good. I love getting people's stories, and I love getting the and this has been and every chat's a little different too. I learn different things from everybody. I think one of the reasons I enjoy it so much is because there is this opportunity to have an exchange and learning and growing with just whoever I'm talking with. So.
Well, and the thing is, you never know what's going to come out of a conversation with people. I've had conversations with people that were like, they're writers or whoever, the professionals that are just starting out. And all of a sudden they say something and you go, well, damn, that's smart, because I didn't think of it, right? But because they're young and they're just starting out, and they're just figuring things out. They figured something out that I just never really paid attention to because I didn't have to. And I go back and go, but if I do pay attention to that, it makes a difference to my business and a difference to what I'm doing. So there is no such thing. There's a guy I know that told me he doesn't go to writers' conferences anymore because he's learned everything he can learn from them. And I went, really? I'm like, I published over 25 books. It'll be 30 by the end of the year. And I go to writers' conferences and like the writers' conference I spoke at this weekend, I did tons of presentations, but in between my own presentations, I went to other presentations and panels because I needed to learn stuff from them. I'm like, I didn't stop learning because I suddenly arrived at some plateau. I don't see myself ever arriving at that plateau. You know what I mean? So I'm like, God, listen to everybody, even the young people that you think, oh man, I've got all this experience, and they don't. Who cares? They've got a nugget. I guarantee it. I guarantee it.
Some of my favorite interviews are first-time authors. There's some of my favorite. I love their enthusiasm, and that for one, and for two, again, their approaches aren't necessarily what you thought of, and and everybody brings themselves to the table. So it's interesting though. It's interesting to watch what people focus on, what they work on, and where I can help them and they can help me. It's such, and then that's true with anybody I interview, by the way, whether it's someone that's been here for 25 books or like I got 5. I got to catch up. I got some work to do. I got so much to do. But
you'll get there, man. You'll get there.
I'll get there. I know. I think I'm gonna do all right, all things considered. I think I'm gonna end up just fine. What I realized with everybody's got something on the table. Writers' conferences, in terms of the presentation part of it, like when I go to conferences, that's where I interview people a lot more closely. You have a drink, everybody's relaxed, everybody's had a good time, and it's amazing what you see come through the door. One of my favorite interviews of all time is Tracy Cooper Posey, because we walked in. She's like, "Oh, what are we gonna do?" It's like, "What's the questions on that?" It's like, "Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out." And the look on her face was like, "What the hell did I walk into? I'm good at this." So it's just like, and that's why, like, it became a really fun interview. It was one of my favorites, but I'll never forget the look on her face. I know she's like, "What the hell did I sign up for? What am I doing?" She comes on the show. We have a good time. She's awesome. And Tracy, if you are watching or listening to this, miss you. We should come back on show at some point. But never. Hey, I always build people up. I always do. It doesn't cost me anything. It literally doesn't. Like, you and I might have similar skills and quality. I'm not going to say we actually do. I'm just saying, like, hypothetically, let's say we do. I can't do what you do.
Oh no,
Lambert. I can't. I don't see the world the way you do. I have no concept of that. Your voice. I say this. I like the book of Ecclesiastes says this. Nothing new under the sun. It's absolutely truth. Everything we say, everything we're struggling with today, everything we're going through, we've been struggling with the same stuff for thousands upon thousands of years. We've answering these questions over and over again for a new age and a new time. That's what we do. The difference is, Dwight Lambert, his own experiences, his own ideas, his own concepts are truly his. And what he brings to this vast sea of knowledge, that's what makes the stuff awesome. Vice versa. There's only one me, and I'm sure the universe is like, "Oh, thank God." But
no. But what you're saying is absolutely true, because here's the thing. Like, I run into writers all the time, and they're like, "Well, I'm not going to go to this group or that group because I don't want someone to steal my ideas." And I'm like, first of all, once you've been writing for a while like me, you have enough ideas. I'm never going to live long enough to write all of them. So if you want some of my ideas, just let me know. I'll give them to you. Second of all, if I gave you the exact same writing prompt that I took, and we sat down right now and wrote stories and compared stories in an hour, there is no way those stories would be the same.
No. We have
they probably would not even be close, because we live in different places. We've had different experiences. We live in different times. So there's no way that our stories are going to be identical. So who cares? People are telling the story of Cinderella over and over and over again in romances and selling thousands and thousands of books. Why? Because this is the way it is. We as human beings are connected to story, but each of us tells the story in our own way. And this is the same of the story of your life. No one can live their lives the way you're living your life right now, because no one has had those same experiences. No one thinks the exact same way that you do. And so it doesn't matter. Just live your life for who you are, and don't worry about comparing yourself to other people. Don't worry about other people imitating you. In fact, let them. Welcome that. I'm like, you want to imitate me? Go ahead. Good luck. I'm going to tell you some parts of that you might want to skip, but go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. Like we all are different. We all see the world differently, and that's what we bring to it. I'm not worried. Like, I've given ideas. Like, someone went to me, "You got a really good idea here. Aren't you worried?" Like, no, because the way I tell that story is going to be different than how you tell it, right? You did it first, cool, but I just know that I'm going to stand out. And it sounds like that might sound very cocky to some people watching, listening to this, but the truth of the matter is, it's the truth. You don't, right? I'm going to stand out. Now, my job, this is my job once the story is written. This is like I figured this out. This is actually my job. My job is to convince you to give it a shot. That's my job.
That's it.
That's it. And if I do a good enough job doing it, right, that you'll give it a shot, then I hopefully I've written the best damn thing ever, and that you'll like it, and that you'll tell other people why this is awesome. I think one of the nicest compliments I ever got was from Randy McCharles. He read my first book, The Watcher. He goes, "I've never read anything like that, ever. Nothing quite like that." Now, that doesn't mean I didn't steal from some of the best, because I sure as hell did, let me tell you.
Yeah.
But I did it my way. I did something very different, something that would stand out. And I mean, no, there's a risk with that. There's a risk with that, because here's the thing. A guy like me, is either going to strike out or hit a home run. Because it's either going to stand out so much that everybody else around me is like, what did he do? And how can I steal this? Or it's going to strike out. It's like, this is what the hell was he thinking?
Like, what in the world was he doing, man?
Yeah. And there's going to be no middle ground. And I accept that. Like, I accept like that. I'm either going to be the home run hitter or I'm going to strike out gloriously. But I wouldn't have it any other way.
Well, yes, because this is the thing. Okay. So really the mentality of freelancing and of doing things on your own is this mentality that I'm willing to take risks and I'm willing to face those risks. Here's the thing for everybody listening here. You can stand out no matter what job you are doing. Now, but let me tell you something. There is a risk involved in that. There are times when I stood out at my job because I went into my job. I always tell people before I figured out how to write full time, I have an extensive collection of hairnets, name tags, and careers that I went through to get to where I am now, right? And there were times when I stood out those jobs because I came in with a total creative mindset. They're like, we've always been doing it this way. And I'm like, well, not me. There are times when that got me promoted, and there are times when it got me fired. And you have to be willing to accept both. That the risk of going out. One of the things that was on my vision board last year was no one can know how far you can go unless you risk going further than anyone else. Mm-hmm. You have to take that risk. Is that uncomfortable? Yeah, it's uncomfortable. But the sooner you get used to being a little bit uncomfortable, the more you can accomplish in whatever field you want to accomplish it in. This is not really, the truth is the people that make it as writers are really the people who took the risk of writing a book. They just took the risk and said, you know what, this could be crap and it could be nothing or it could be something and I'm going to do it anyway. You know, that's really where it's at, is that ability, that willingness to take that risk is what sets entrepreneurs and freelancers and people like that apart from people who say, I'm comfortable in my company job and I'm just going to do whatever they tell me, whenever they tell me, and go. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's some people that use their jobs as a pathway to their hobbies they do on the weekends, and they love to go out and camp and hunt and fish or whatever, and their job enables them to do that. Fantastic. Do that. Do your job. But you're spending a large part of your life in something that you're not enjoying when you don't have to do that.
The question, I think, and this is actually a good spot, I think, to put this interview into a context here is,
yes,
3 words. Are you happy? That's the key. Whether you're a freelancer, whether you're employed, whether you're a CEO, it doesn't matter. Are you happy? Because I'm going to tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, all the money in the world, all that's going to buy if you're really miserable is drugs or alcohol or vice, of trouble. It's going to buy you trouble is what it's going to do. Because because if you're miserable, it's going to come out in a bunch of different ways. Mm-hmm. It just is. That there's no ifs, there's no ands, there's no buts. That is how the world works. You can have all the money in the world, and if you have nothing else to show for it, if you're just miserable the whole time, yeah, you're comfortable, but now you're in hell. We talked about earlier how convenience is the enslavement. Comfort is the ultimate temptation in life. Mm-hmm. The truth of the matter is you stop changing when you're comfortable. I have 8 rules to success, and it's the 8th rule: stay uncomfortable. I recognize the fact that I'm not going to grow if I keep myself in like this wonderful static position. I don't want some stability. Sure, some is nice. But the thing is, I also know that there's nothing to reach for, nothing to go for. I'm going to stop growing, and inevitably, I'm going to shrink. I'm going to become something smaller. I don't mind being small in the sense that the world is much more significant than me. I've gotten over the fact that the world does not revolve around me. It took a long time, but I got there. But that's one thing. It's another thing to actually be small. And you do not want to ever put yourself in a position to be tiny and insignificant in the sense of you're in complete misery and you're not changing. The word for that is hell. That's hell. Everything else You don't, whether you're working. I say this and I mean this. Everybody does exactly what they want to do.
Yes.
The only real question is this: are you aware of what you want when you make those decisions in those moments? Because if you are aware, that's one thing. You can live with it. But if you're just doing something and you're not really thinking about why you're doing it, you're just doing it, chances are you're heading for nothing but tornado. Because you are serving a want, but a want you don't understand. That's trouble.
Well, think about this too. Let's define tragedy and comedy. Okay, a tragedy is a book that ends when the hero we've been following the entire book gets what they want. A comedy, a happy ending, is when they get what they need. Mm-hmm. Now, when you go by that definition, sometimes what we want or what we think we want isn't what we need, and it isn't what we really want. I mean, part of this is what you're looking for really. Well, I'm going to give you two things because I'm going to give you a plug for a book too.
Cool.
So exactly that you think, happiness, being happy is vital to, we only have one life. And whatever you think about the afterlife, whatever your personal religious beliefs or whatever are about what happens after we die, there's only one life we live here. And so I don't think that whatever is out there wants us to be miserable for that entire life, to just prepare for some heavenly afterlife. I don't think that one cancels out the other. But I'm going to recommend a book to you. So this year, last year I had a vision board and it was pretty cluttered. And 2020 was amazing because many of the things, if you don't know what a vision board is just something where you visualize what you want and the things that are important to you for the year, and mine hangs over my desk so I can look at it right now and go, these are the things I want. And one of the things that I put on mine this year was learn to listen. And then I came across a book, and it's been out for a while, but I've heard of it, but I just finally got around to reading it. It's called The Listening Path, and I can't remember the author's name. Look it up on Amazon if you want, but go buy it at your local bookstore when you find it. But it's called The Listening Path. But what it's about is not all about listening to other people, but about listening to yourself. About getting up in the morning, and one of the practices she advocates for is morning pages. And mine are, where are they? They're right here. And every morning I get up and the first 45 minutes I'm awake before I do anything else, I handwrite 3 pages. And I just write whatever is in my head, whatever comes to mind. And it's only for you. Do not show it to the people you love even, because some of the things that come out of there will be things that, just let them be what they are. But you may not want your significant other to read that. And they may not want to read that because in the first 45 minutes you're awake, your mind doesn't have the filters up yet. So you're just pouring onto the page, and people think, I don't have 45 minutes. But I guarantee you, if you do this, it actually makes you more efficient throughout the day and gives you more time. And that's one of the things she talks about, but I guarantee you from personal experience that it's true. But what it also does is then you read back over some of the things that you wrote that morning, and you realize you're listening to the real you, what's inside you. So some of the things you think about is every now and then I use prompts, and one of them is, I want or I need more of blank in my life. And let you answer that question. You don't need a therapist. You don't need your spouse to answer it. You don't need anybody else to answer it. Answer it for yourself. I need blank, more blank in my life. What is that? And then when you're done writing your pages and you kind of set that aside, ask yourself the question, why don't I have more blank in my life? And usually the answer is you. You're the reason you don't have more of that in your life. And I can tell you this, the conclusion I came to when I decided I was going to be a full-time writer, and this was what I was going to do, and that was it. And basically I write, edit, or publish, and that's pretty much my life. That's all I do as far as job-wise. I do other things. I have hobbies. I have a German Shepherd. He keeps me in track. But once I decided that, pretty much anybody in my life that discourages me from that gets shoved out the door. And I don't care how long we've been friends. I don't care if we're related. I don't care. Now, that doesn't mean I don't ever see or talk to them again. What it means is they no longer get to be in that close circle next to me, because I only need people in that close circle next to me that believe in what I'm doing and are willing to support me while I do it. Because I'm listening to them, I'm hearing them, and that's going in my head. And then I start to repeat that myself, and I'm listening to myself, and I get into a really bad place. There's been one time since I started writing full time when I was writing nonfiction, doing freelance stuff still for about 3 years, but I didn't write a word of fiction for those 3 years. By the end of that 3 years, I was almost insane. I was as close to the edge as I've ever been. And it's because I wasn't listening to myself and I wasn't doing the things that I love. You have one shot at this, really. I mean, and so you might as well make the most of your life that you have now. I highly encourage you, if you're at all searching for like, where do I belong in this big scheme of things, that you get that book, The Listening Path, and just start doing those daily pages and see what happens. Just see what happens to your life when you do those kind of things. But the other aspect is, if you do discover that you're a creative and that you're built to create, I mean, quite honestly, email me and I will give you a list of books to read that will help you reset your mentality about what creativity is and what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. Because there's a whole line of BS around that too. So anyway, sermon over. I'll just leave that all there. But I will tell you this: God, you've got to do it. It'll change your life so much. You just got to do it. You have to do it.
It's always interesting to me to see where everybody's at, because again, I have a unique privilege of interviewing people at all levels on this, and it's what I have found. This is just and I think this is a cool way where we can, I think, have a good way to end the talk, at least for now, because I know I get the feeling, my friend, that one day I'm going to meet you in a writing conference. We're both going to be relatively successful at what we're doing, and you're going to be like, how's the cross country traveling interviewing going? Awesome. Want to have a drink and talk about it? You'd be like, yeah, let's just do it. And right,
let's do it.
I do see, like, that's my future, and I already know, like, that's where I'm going, and that's what I want. And there's only like a couple of things stopping me, and I just realized that I'm going to get all of them this year. I'm too old to wait. I'm too old to wait. And that's just how I look at it. And but the thing is, I recognize something, like, really successful people have a clear understanding of what they want, and they've learned how to not get in their own way to do it. What was you? So I'm going to ask this: when did you realize this? Because for me, there was a point with me, but I'm curious about this with you. I'm like, how can I get out of my own way and just let things happen? Because that, to me, is also something we unspokenly haven't talked about, but we are talking about this, because
we are.
When you do see success, because I know this, so I just happened to me when I won the award, my award for the podcast. I literally had that moment where I sat back and go, what did I do to achieve this?
Yeah.
Like, I literally had to ask myself that question. What could I do? What could get in the way of me coming back here again, if I wanted to come back here again? To be perfectly honest with you, if I never win that award again, that's cool. I love that I did it once. I love being a finalist.
Yeah.
And I'm very honored to be considered in that group. But I don't necessarily need that award again. I got it once, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like, I did it, and I did it, right? So I asked myself what I could do, and I realized that's where I came up with my 5th rule of success: get out of your own way. But that's rule 5. Rule 8 is actually stay uncomfortable. So just so you know. But what was that for you? For me, it was that. What was that for you?
Okay, so there's actually 2 moments, because so the first one was, it really was freelance, getting government contracts, and which the way I got into those is a long, convoluted story we don't even have time for here. It'd be a whole different podcast. But and I realized that my words were actually worth money and that the skills I had were valuable. When I was coming up in high school, and some of you may have had the same experience, my counselors told me, you are a very talented writer. You can tell stories really well. That's fantastic. What are you going to do to make money? And here's the thing. I believed them that writing was not a path to make money. I held on to my dream and kept doing the silly things of submitting stories to magazines and submitting novels to publishers. And I'm not saying that wasn't valuable in its own way of that persistence that developed, but that was not the answer. You know what I mean? That was not the answer. So when I saw that I could get paid for my money, for my words, so I saw, first of all, I saw money, and I saw that the talent I had was valuable and that other people didn't have it. I would always think of certain people as smarter than me, and then I realized they had a different smarts than I did, and they did not have the same skills and the same level that I did. So when I realized that, that enabled me to go back to fiction and say, oh, I can apply these same principles to writing fiction and making money. It was dumb that it took that to click, sort of, but in other ways it wasn't dumb because it was just the way things happened. So that part of it. But when I went through the period of not writing and probably some of the most serious mental anguish of my life, what I realized it was I woke up one day and realized that I was really, really angry. And that my anger was getting in the way of everything I was trying to do, but my anger wasn't at someone else. My anger was at me because I was the one that was failing. And as soon as I realized that I was angry with myself because it was my fault for allowing myself to stay in this position and allowing myself to be here, when I broke out of that 3 years, it was like a dam broke. I mean, I was at my most creative and prolific, almost. And in this past year with 2020, what happened to me was many writers came into 2020. There were so many things going on in the world that they just froze and they couldn't write because they got blocked by what was around them. And me, I turned to the only escape I knew, which was writing. Mm-hmm. And so I undertook crazy challenges. Last year, before the pandemic started, I agreed to a short story challenge. I was going to write a short story every week, 2,000 words long minimum for an entire year, because Ray Bradbury said you can't write 52 bad short stories in a row. So I believed him because, you know, what the hell? So a friend of mine challenged me to do it. So I said, yes. Then I decided I'm going to do 1 million words in 2020. I'm only going to count the words that I can sell that I'm publishing as fiction and the words I get paid for freelance. Those are the words I'm going to count, but I'm doing 1 million words in 2020. I did 1 million words by about November 15th of last year. Then a friend of mine came to me in October and said, will you be my buddy for Nano? And I said, I wasn't going to do it this year, but what the hell? I can't just let my muse play. So I'm going to write this stupid book that I made up for a webinar that I did for Plotter, a software that I work with. And I made up this stupid plot about Cthulhu falling in love with Internet Karen because they were both the epitome of evil and then having an adventure together, right? And I outlined this thing for a webinar and it was a joke, but every time I presented it at a webinar, people were like, I love that. I would read that book. So I came down to Nano and I didn't have a book I was going to write for Nano, but I was like, well, I can write Cthulhu and Karen. Well, now that book is tentatively titled The Call of Karen. It hasn't yet been published. It's still in the process of editing and all that kind of stuff. But I finished that. And what it was that my brain now, instead of retreating from writing when I was in trouble and when the world was in trouble, my brain went, this is our escape. This is what we do. This is what we're built for. So ignore all that and do what you're made to do. And that's what I did. That was it. So those moments are like, once that breaks through, God, everybody, you just got to break through. You got to have that moment because once you have it, your life will never, ever be the same. It'll never be the same, because whenever you are in a hard spot or in trouble or whatever the case may be, you will turn to that thing that is your thing. You will turn to it and it will save you. It will save your mentality. It will save your sanity. It will save your life. It absolutely, when I didn't write for 3 years, when I came out of that, writing saved my life at that point. If I hadn't had writing, I don't know what, I probably wouldn't be here. That simple. So anyway, sorry.
No, cool. No. This is what we do, man. This is what we. So, ladies and gentlemen, literally, I had no notes for this conversation. I actually went to Troy at the beginning of the it was the beginning of the year, or maybe towards the end of last year. It's like, you want to come back on my show? He said, yeah, sure. Right? Or why not? Right? And that's it. We set a date, we set a time, and I verified it a week ago just to make sure we were still doing it, and that was it. That was it. Yeah, no notes, nothing. Like, we just had this was our battle plan. It's like, now I can get away with this. I've been interviewing people for 20 years, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm at that point. I'm very comfortable talking to just about anybody, right? So I'm not necessarily recommending you do it my way, but I'm good at it. Yeah. Hey, I'm not trying to be confident. I truly do think I'm a great interviewer, and I think I'm very good at it. If I wasn't, you wouldn't be doing this. But for me, when the pandemic happened, I think the most important thing, like, to me, like, there's two things that came to my mind: C.S. Lewis and let's make some fucking money. Like, literally, those are the two thoughts. C.S. Lewis read out Mere Christianity on the radio during World War II when the world was being bombed. Yep. What would become Mere Christianity at that point in time. And on the one hand, it's like, this means nothing. You're getting bombed. On the other hand, it means everything, because here's the thing. Here's what you're saying in that moment when these dark things are happening around you. Life goes on. That's it. Like, life goes on no matter what. It doesn't matter. Look, the world could literally be on fire right now. It's entirely a possibility. And if the world is on fire and you're still here, you're going to figure out a way to live with the fire. That's just how it is. This is why my view on the pandemic is very, very laissez-faire. I don't have the same, like, fear, because to me it's like, if it comes, it comes. And it's easy for me to say that, I know. But the truth of the matter is, I've come face to face with my own mortality. There really isn't much in this life that scares me. That's my strength and weakness. I know it. But C.S. Lewis, Reading in the Dark, encourages you, like, no matter how bad it gets, you can still shine in the dark, and that light will encourage others to shine as well. And that's the important part. Never let the storm get inside you. Just leave it on the outside, first and foremost. Second, because a lot of people do get frozen, there's an opportunity to really do things, because if you get there first. I read on my show before anybody else did, right? I did that. I was literally March 15th. My March 30th was my first reading of my novel. I just did because it's like, hey, life goes on, right? I've done hundreds of episodes of the podcast. This has been my escape. I've released 2 books. I draw stuff. Like I said, porn stashes on Lego. It's great. It's a wonderful thing. Yeah. Right? It's a great thing. Yeah. That doesn't mean I'm not crazy. I probably am crazy, but I'm okay with it. And I'm definitely not, there's no anxiety. Like, there legitimately is no anxiety with what's going on right now with me. And I know that might weird some people out, but the honest truth is, it is what it is. I've made my peace with it. Let's move on. That sounds maybe cynical, but no.
I mean, the thing is, I think here's why people are so drawn to writing and poetry and art and basically, why Vonnegut says go into the arts, and he means it. Whether you're any good at it or not, go into it. And part of the reason is the reason I write is hope. And I think the reason people read is hope. They go, well, even a thriller where everybody dies, I kill off 6 people in the first chapter. They end that first chapter, they go to bed, they go, well, that's pretty bad, but that's not my life. That's not me. That's not my life. I still have hope. And the other thing is that I think fiction offers us a clearer vision of morality than we get in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And we have that opportunity, but what it also teaches us, the reason we like flawed heroes so much is because it teaches us that ordinary people like us can triumph.
Mm-hmm.
Dragons can be killed, mysteries can be solved. John McClane can jump off the side of the building, crash through some glass windows, and toss the bad guy off the roof and be okay, right? Shoot himself in the shoulder and he's good to go, man. But what that does is it teaches us that ordinary people that are flawed just like us can accomplish great things. And I think that's really what a lot of this stuff is about. And if you are living in the place where you are doing the thing that you love, no matter what that is, and no matter who you're doing it for, that thing is your hope. And I think a lot of the people that froze in 2020 lost sight of their hope and focused on the hopeless surrounding them instead.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, my hope was my focus, right? It was an opportunity. It was a focus. And it literally transformed the way I approach the world this year. So I'm telling you that you can do it. You can. This is not, and there is nothing special about me beyond just that I can string the alphabet together and make cool stuff out of it, make you imagine things out of it. Other than that, there's nothing special. I tell people, the life of a successful author who works full time is on Tuesdays. I go scoop the shit out of the backyard because I don't want my German Shepherd shit sitting there all week, and put it out with the rest of the trash. I mean, I don't have a fleet of servants doing these things for me or whatever. It's just a life. It's just a life. That's what it is. So listen, I mean, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, if you're doing the thing that you love, that's your hope. That's your thing. Do it. I mean, do it. This is, I feel so fortunate to have found who I am and what I was built for. But you can do the same thing. There's, as we were talking about earlier, the only thing stopping you is you. So take the time, listen to yourself, and do the things that you love. I mean,
I think that's a good. I think we have a good interview here. What do you think, sir?
I think so, dude. Yeah. We could probably do one of these every 6 months and still never exhaust our topics. I'm telling you.
No, it's just. I feel like So I gotta say, I'm gonna say this before we wrap up, and you get to plug your stuff. Thank you. I actually feel I should say that because I don't know why exactly I inspire people the way I do, but I get the feeling like in your case in particular, you've gone out of your way to support me when you didn't have to. And I feel like I should actually say it there. I don't know what I did, but thank you nonetheless.
Well, here's the thing is first of all, I love to see people pursuing the things that they love, kind of regardless of the cost. You know what I mean? I mean, doing this is hard. And I'm also going to tell you that listening to yourself and finding out what you love is hard. It's hard work. But it's so worth it. And watching other people do it gives me incredible joy. It really, really does. And the other thing, I just feel like you're pursuing the things that you love and doing it in a way that is meaningful. And I admire and appreciate that, and I want to share that with you. I mean, one of the things I love to do is when I go to art shows and things at writers' conferences or various different conferences, things like that, the thing I like to do is buy art when I go to that art show. I have lots of art in my house. Some of it I love more than others, but I have lots of art in my house. And why do I do that? Because I want that person to succeed, but I also want them to feel like they are a success. And they feel like that because you buy things, you pay attention to them, you share their stuff, I think it's important for us as creatives to support other creatives. So that's one of the reasons I love coming on the show and I love watching your shows and things like that, is because I enjoy watching you pursue the things that you love and doing it well in a meaningful way. I think you're brilliant in that way, and I'll come back on your show anytime and tell you you're brilliant again if necessary.
All right. Well, and then when you got something new and wonderful to promote in like say 6 months time, bug me. I'll turn you back. I'll bring anytime, man. I'll take the ego booster if nothing else. That all said, I do think we've had a great time here, and I'm glad I did it. However, not all good things must come to an end at some point, Mr. Choi, and I think we've hit that point. So that all said, tell people who you are, and tell people what you're doing, and tell people where they can find you.
Well, okay. So I'm Troy Lambert. As mentioned, I'm a freelance writer, but I'm also an author and editor. Last year, as a result of writing 1,000,000 words last year, I have 5 manuscripts finished that are in various stages of editing. But the next one to come out will be It's Teaching Moments, and it's a sequel to my first novel in the Max Boucher series, which is called Harvested. That is also out on audio right now. You can find that on Amazon, preferably at your local bookstore. And if you have a local bookstore who participates in Libro FM, you can actually get the audiobook through Libro FM and support your local bookstore at the exact same time. So I'm going to encourage you to order my books through your local bookstore, but if you must resort to it, you can order them on Amazon as well, or if you like digital copies, which I happen to like as well. So that's Harvested. That's my latest. The sequel to that will be out this spring. You can find me at troylambertwrites.com, and you can actually contact me through there, and you can find me on social media. The best places are Facebook and Twitter for writerly type stuff, and professional type stuff if you want to talk freelancing and things like that. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm all over the place there, and you're welcome to come and hunt me down, send me messages, whatever you'd like to do.
All right. Well, there, ladies and gentlemen, this was this episode. Just Josh, and I want to thank Troy for being able to come up with me for 90 minutes here and have a really fun little chat. Now, if you want to support this channel, you can do so a number of different ways. On twitch.tv, you can hit the subscribe button or the follow button. I'm very close to being an affiliate on Twitch. I would love to get there. My YouTube channel is Joshua Pantellaresco. You can follow me there, hit the subscribe button, and get notifications. Finally, I don't mention this enough, but I should. But I am on Patreon, on patreon.com/JoshingPodcast. So if you guys want to support me on a financial level, you can. But if not, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, depending on what you're doing. Stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. And tomorrow, I got James Allen Gardner. It's going to be a fun chat. Thanks, Troy.
All right. Thanks, man. I'll be watching tomorrow.
Damn right. Take care.